Hey guys, welcome back. It's Kevin and I, Ant. We're running today we have a nice little selection of comics for you, but we're here today because we're talking specifically about, unfortunately, the dismissal of Free Comic Book Day that was on May 2nd, I believe?
May 2nd this year.
Yeah. So the thing is, it's a very important day to us nerds that, you get those free comics, but we recognize, hey, we work in a library. This is where everything's free all the time, right?
Free.
So, we want to let you know that there's Hoopla and there's also the library still available for you to check out these comic book selections. We have a few here to show as examples, and then we were going to kind of nerd out a bit about how we love comics ourselves. So I think how about we do that then, Kevin? Let's talk a little bit about what makes comics so important to you. What is like...
Well, growing up, I actually didn't read comics very much. I just would see my favorite characters and would ask my mom or dad to pick me up the comic, and from there I would actually draw the characters, and that's continued on even through high school. And it panned down to these comics here were pretty influential for me. These are the X-Men comics done by Jim Lee, who now I believe works for DC and does the Batman, or did the Batman series.
Yeah, he's done both Marvel and DC.
And then this series over here, Spider-Man, you can see it's done by Todd McFarlane, who is pretty famous in the comic and toy world. He created the character Spawn.
Oh, really?
Which they actually made a movie about.
That's right.
I think there's a reboot coming, if I remember correctly. But I remember spending a lot of time in my room with these, drawing the characters, and that's actually was pretty influential for me.
Yeah.
And
it didn't happen at the early age. It was more like right when you were coming of age kind of thing.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah.
See, the inspiration is great. I can't say the same for me, unfortunately, but I mean, of course, I always believed in storytelling, and which is why I've always really loved Stan Lee's work and stuff, because, he's not just a great, writer, he's a great storyteller, which is actually really inspiring on its own, because they always say there's one thing you're good at and you're not so good at another. Like they say that Stephen King, for instance, can't tell a story if, he had a gun to his head or whatever, but yet he writes awesome stories. But, a lot of his work was my favorite, but I did kind of drift into the more DC as I got older, because, it's not just because it says dark comics, it's because they were a little more darker, and they had sort of like a fantasy theme in a modern setting, in my opinion. So I think we agreed on that too. As a matter of fact, we talked about how, like, in the past there was, it's all about like when you started. And I think that's the most fascinating part about this, is that like whenever you were watching whatever it is, when you turned on the TV, and if it was 1992, you were probably watching Batman the Animated Series. Mm-hmm. If it was 2004, you were probably watching the Fantastic Four, which had that real anime look to it, which was awesome too, yes, we can admit. But so it's really like when you jumped into the pool that you discovered what it is you love about comics. So and I wanted to say on that behalf is that, like, I think where I really jumped into was, I would just say probably those mid-teens, because, it became a little more real to me and I was actually understanding what I'm reading. But so I wanted to kind of touch on the ones that I really like here. I brought some stuff. If you're interested, these are my little personal favorites. Fantastic Four will always be my favorite, because the family fun adventure action is just what that's all about. And truly, you got everybody's like character just giving in as a whole. Almost like, this is a little more adult, but like Ghostbusters kind of got that where every character's got a different personality that kind of adds to the plate.
I love Fantastic Four. My daughter, the TV series you mentioned earlier, my daughter and I actually watched, so whenever I see Fantastic Four, I think of that time.
Yeah. See, I think that's what's awesome about it, is that like everybody has like a reference point, but that's the other part that makes it kind of fun, or it could be kind of dangerous depending on where you are. Yeah. If you're on the internet, I guess it's not dangerous, but but my point is that arguments can go into place, because it's like, if you grew up watching the Tim Burton Batmans, for instance, then that would be this guy right here, by the way. Then you'll be convinced that the Joker killed Batman's parents because that was the depiction there.
Yeah.
But that's what I think was so fun about it is that like everybody's got a different point of view, and they're just all coming from everywhere where you jumped in, where you discovered comics for yourself, whether it was the comics or whether it was the movies or however. And that was another thing we talked about, which is pretty cool, is that there's all kinds of adaptions, right? We're so used to how like everybody always says like the book was better and that kind of thing. Well, now comics, they don't have like no canon like we talked about in previous times with the Star Wars canon and that kind of thing. They're just kind of like, they're all just out there having fun almost. Like they're all just different like limited series basically, and they'll even say
the same idea.
Exactly. So actually I want to go into how the 52, and I believe that started back in the, I want to say 2006. I think they debuted the limited series of the 52, and it was right after the Crisis, the Infinite Crisis, the
Crisis on
miniseries.
Infinite Earth?
Yeah,
Is
well,
that-
it was
or
the
no, it's after
miniseries
Oh,
that
the
kind of
that's
added
right,
after
yes.
that. But I really liked like this one with Supergirl, for instance, because something about the 52 really allowed you to kind of learn about character growth and character arcs. They kind of, what some might say is just like it just, because like for instance, this is just volume 2. And it still is all about her origin. It's still about, she still doesn't even know English and by the end of this whole volume. But they really stretched it. And it depends, because if you're all in it for the action, which this all came from, it was Action Comics, then it may not be for you. But I really enjoy how it just slows down and it just like allows you to learn like daily basis. She's just kind of like, some people might not like it. I like it. You even discover that she befriended what was her name? I think it's Silver Banshee.
Oh.
Yeah, Silver Banshee, and she's typically a bad girl, but actually there's a friendship there, and it's very organic, it's very raw, it's very just.
It's a new take on the character.
Yeah.
Because that wasn't in the original.
Yeah, exactly.
story.
So it's kind of neat how that came to be. What else do we got? Well, did you want to just kind of go over what we got here for the rest of them, or?
Sure.
I kind of ranted. Sorry.
Actually, I want to just point out I have this is my personal copy of the Ghostbusters comics that were published by IDW, I believe is the name of the company. I'll have to double check that, but yes,
Yeah,
IDW.
there it
Yes,
is on the
yes,
back.
This is great. Let me pull this out so you can kind of see the artwork in here. It's very stylized, so if that bothers you, this might not be for you. But if you can get past that, the story is actually pretty good. I'm trying to find some pictures of the Ghostbusters for you. Here's a picture of some ghosts too.
Yeah.
This is a really cool series. This is the most recent one that I've read, besides Harley Quinn from the DC universe. The most recent one I read was the Ghostbusters crossed over with the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and as ridiculous as that sounds, it was actually a really fun story.
Mm-hmm.
And now, because of that, they have a working interdimensional portal
Yeah.
that they could cross over to other Ghostbuster universes, such as the new one.
Hey.
What is the female one called? Is it Answer the Call?
Oh.
Ghostbusters Answer the Call?
I don't know. Actually, I've never seen that one.
Oh, okay.
But, yeah.
Well, anyway, the original Ghostbusters from the 1984 movie
Yeah,
crossed
1984.
over into the new the new universe with Kate McKinnon and
Oh, they
Melissa
did?
McCarthy. Yes, those characters.
What?
So they actually
so
have
it almost
interacted.
became like a multi-universe.
multiverse.
Oh,
Yeah,
that's
it was
cool.
It
That's
sounds
so cool.
silly, but it actually was actually pretty good.
And I think if they keep that door open, it'll be great because they could just keep going. And actually, that'll kind of help me touch on bases with this one, which Andy couldn't even believe it when he came around the corner to film this, that we have, a crossover here. And this one is just like you said, Kevin. It basically started with a series of comics that were all about Batman versus the, wait, let me take a step back. Yep, it was Predator versus Batman or Batman versus Predator. I think it was alphabetical. And basically, like then they eventually started making some adaptations of Superman versus the aliens, and then this is the overall conclusion of that same like universe where that happened, that took place, and you'll get a lot of those references in this book too. It's very awesome, and the art kind of reminds me of a little bit of who's the guy that renders them where they look real? Alex Ross.
Alex Ross.
Yeah, Alex Ross, where he does the depictions of all the characters, very realistic style. So look up him if you're interested in that kind of art.
And he has a couple of comics himself,
Yeah.
too. I remember they have Superman, Batman, and Wonder Woman, these like oversized comics.
The,
that
like,
are
trinities,
the
I
origin
think.
stories of each. Yeah.
Yeah.
think-
So yeah, that was cool because I was really glad that it kind of came. I swear, because I used to read those all the time when I was a kid, and then it was nice because I just read this one recently, and it had that conclusion. So I felt like I finally had closure to that story. Kevin, real quick, I wanted to also say I found this within our library, and I think this thing is very awesome because, you know, Kevin here himself has been very inspired by comics to the point where he's had it as a major in college. As far as you said, it was
I
media
have
arts?
a bachelor's degree in media arts and animation. Yes.
Great. So, you know, for some of our comic book lovers that would like to be inspired or are inspired already, because that comes easy, you know, we have a book like this and helping the 10 secrets to creating your own comic. And I just kind of briefing through it myself, and I saw that it really touches bases on a lot of cool things. Like, for instance, it talks about how important comic costumes are to not just the personality or the emotion reactions that you're depicting in your oh, sorry, let me show you that. Yeah, and I think that's just absolutely it. You know, it is essential.
It's important.
Yeah.
The planning process is very, very important. Yeah. You want to make sure your characters stand out.
Yeah.
In, the background.
And I guess what I'm trying to sum it up, and I'm thinking to myself, like, when it comes to like a comic, how do you actually really show your emotions and things? And you know, that's what was awesome about it, is that it even breaks it down for you, that outfits to gestures, which is hard to do in comics, are all very, like, you know, it's a delicate art. And that's why it's really important to me and you, because I think that, you know, we find these stories just as important as we would any source of media, really. And it's always going to hold that special place in my heart. But this one's also available for you too, folks. So if you're interested, you could read that one. And remember, I don't know if I said it already, but we're doing curbside again, and some of these are available for you. A lot of these that are up on display are. And then, I didn't really go over it too much, but I'll just do a quick, you know, kind of slide through on what Hoopla has as far as comics as well. There is, I want to say, hundreds of comics in this, Kevin. It's awesome. And it's not just DC or Marvel stuff, you know. You got Big Nate, you got Garfield comics, you got Archie comics in there, for goodness sake. Yep. And no, there's a lot of good stuff here, and it seems every day, yeah, there's a Batman there, City of Bane, that's cool. So let's just sum it up real quick and say, what would be your ultimate favorite comic book character? I think that's a fun conversation.
Yes. If you asked me years ago, I would have said Superman.
Yeah.
Then I would have said Batman.
Mm-hmm.
Now I'm really enjoying Harley Quinn.
Oh, that's her.
Not because of the Suicide Squad movie.
Right.
Just because I really enjoyed the comic series that came out, I want to say in 2013 or 2014.
Mm-hmm.
She started having her own series, and I read through that, and I loved how she was able to break away from the character of Joker and that toxic relationship and kind of become her own hero. And
and
she's
when she
very
did,
much
she
an
stood out.
Yes,
It's
and
really great.
she's very similar to the Deadpool character, like that anti-hero type.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I think she's probably a favorite.
Your favorite right now.
How about you?
I would say Captain Marvel. Definitely my favorite right now. She is just, speaking of going out there and being on your own and not really needing anyone, I really found, and I'll be honest, I definitely found it, I found out her character more with the movie that just released about a couple years ago. And, you know, I was really astounded by the fact that the character just, it didn't have to fall into any of these cliches. You know, she didn't have to find the guy at some point that she has to save, or vice versa, or she didn't have to you know, take these certain character you know, plot, I guess, points that you have to reach just to become a comic book character. And in our defense of being comic book fans, I think we are all looking for something like that all the time, because you know, we don't want to be known as just those cliche, hey, you know, bit by a spider and now you got these powers and you're conflicted with how you're going to deal with school and dealing with your first date and that kind of thing, which aren't bad, but they do get kind of old, unfortunately. I really like her comics. I really like how they're kind of doing it like very traditional style, where almost every comic has like kind of a little guest star. And you know, it's nice because they're seeing her and they're seeing her power, and you know, it's kind of like what the odd, like, how does that work? You know, like Harley Quinn could be meeting up with Power Girl or Supergirl, and it's like, but somehow they make it work. It's awesome.
And she has been up with Power Girl.
Yeah, she has. Speaking of which, that's a comic that's also on Hoopla. I saw it. Yeah, she's a real character. But we're happy to be reporting this to you folks, and hopefully, you know, if everything going the way it is, you know, you can still be able to enjoy yourself a comic. I'll tell you right now, Hoopla is the way to go, because there are just so many in there. You saw it yourself.
I'm ashamed to admit I have not signed up for Hoopla yet. I know.
Well, I know what he'll be doing tonight.
Yeah.
All right, everyone. Thanks for joining us. Have a good one.
Bye-bye.